Joshua Rosa, can you, to start with, could you just tell us a bit about who you are, where you come from, and what kind of led you to doing the mentoring work and the life coaching work that you do?
Yeah. So I'm from New Jersey, United States. And for me, the funny thing is this was actually never intentional. Like I work in media and marketing and stuff like that. And I started a media company with a friend of mine. And I was like, I can't really tell people that I can help them grow their reach or, build out their brand or build out their social media if I can't do it for myself. So my background also is in speaking. I'm a public speaker. I travel. I speak mostly faith-based things and conferences. So I was like, that's my skill set. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use what I have, and I'm going to create two pieces of content a day for 20 days because that was my metric. And within the first 10 days, I my social media went from 2,000 to 10,000. And then within about 6 months, I broke the 100,000 mark on TikTok, and then it took about like 8 or 9 months for Instagram, and it just people have the I can't respond to everybody because there's so many DMs like at one point.
Mm.
So I just what I do see, it's always like so many positive things that people receive from it. So I'm like, okay, that's the motivation in itself. If somebody's getting something out of it, then you know what, I'm gonna continue to make this type of content, and kind of just fell into that.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how I found you was through Instagram and relating to a lot of the things you were saying. And yeah, I wondered like where's that come from? Like, you know, obviously you talk a lot about various different things around mental health and boundary making and relationships and all that kind of stuff. Where does a lot of that kind of stuff originate from? Where's that coming from?
Yeah, so a lot of that really just comes from questions, like conversations that I have with other people, or saying the DMs that people send me and stuff like that. And it's just kind of understanding that's the marketing side of it, knowing your KPIs, your known points of interest, what people are interested in. So for me, it's like, okay, I know that people are receiving something from this. And I always say that I create content that people need and want, and then I create content that I want. So those are my two balances. Like I'll do the thing that people are asking and make sure that I address that. So then I can speak about the things that I want to post or speak about, which funny enough, my things never do well, but the things that people are asking for, those are the things that are successful. So I guess there's a reason why they're asking for it. That's really the crux of it. People ask. That's it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I know you talk about a lot about telling stories and
Yeah.
how we can, that is a way for us to grow is through telling stories. So, yeah, tell us a bit about that, like the idea of us telling our stories and how
Yeah.
that can allow us to sort of grow as individuals.
Yeah. So I mean that's like a big takeaway right now with the branding in general, that people are aligning with brands that tell a story, that like all the way to grow on social media itself is literally showing who you are because people want to buy into that. So the reality that every person, no matter where you are in life, you have a story. There's something you've gone through, there's something you relate to, there's something you've failed and or tried and failed miserably. Everyone has a story. And I think the most important aspect of being able to connect with people is let them know that their story is not just theirs. That's, we all share these common problems. We all share these common issues. And developing and fleshing out what your story looks like and sounds like is the ultimate way to connect with people. So for me, like that's the aspect. If I can tell people these things and help them realize that they're not alone, it makes it a lot easier for a community to be built around that.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And I suppose nowadays we're seeing a huge rise in sort of like having our own personal brand and everyone, even if you don't have a business, you're not a business owner, people sort of do create these personal brands through their Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I guess yours is kind of the mental health, relationships, setting boundaries, stuff like that. Was there anything that happened in your personal life that kind of made that particularly applicable to the sort of content that you like to create?
Yeah. So yes and no. This is a struggle with like being which is interesting to say. The struggle with being like emotionally healthy is that you understand why people do certain things, and it can be frustrating because you want to be mad and you want to be like, oh, you're this and this and this, but then you're like, yeah, but this is the reason why. Like you have these attachment styles or these abandonment issues, and that's why you revert to those things. I have like there's every human person that's ever been in a relationship is gonna have some type of issue, whether it's platonic or romantic or whatever it looks like. There's gonna be something in some point that you've gone through. I think that understanding those things helps me like talk about it and share it, but not so much of those things have any hold over me. Rather, I have a hold and controlling over them. Yeah, of course, like everyone's been through stuff, but those aren't things that I speak about kind of in hints of things that I have, but typically what I speak about is not mostly about me. Like
Mhm.
it's just things that I know that needs to be said or heard and people relate to. So yes, but not influenced by,
Mhm.
if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. I was just curious because I follow you on Instagram and a lot of your stuff is about, like, for example, if we take relationships and it's people staying in toxic or unhealthy relationships, and you talk a lot about like walking away or putting yourself first. A lot of it seems quite like self-worth
Mm.
based. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the core of everything that I speak about is um self-worth at its identity, knowing who you are, your identity, the thing you were made for, why you were made is the only way you're going to have any healthy relationship, period. Like you can't have successful relationships without being successfully or well, your own relationship with you. Like that has to be the first successful relationship for everything else to flourish. And the reason for a lot of people why we fall into like those toxic things or those not healthy relationships for us is because we tend to have a problem with ourselves. So what happens is if you mimic my toxicity, I feel comfortable with you. I'm in this state of like relaxation, even though you're not. It's because you're so used to being in that fight or flight, that cortisol, raised cortisol levels, that when you have somebody in your life that does the same for you, you think, you know, oh, this is normal. Or like our parents, like the relationships that they had and the way they fought or they argued, you would think, oh, well, this is how a healthy relationship is supposed to look like because that's what was cemented in me. So I think first, getting to the core of who you are will allow you to accept the love that you deserve from others.
Mm. Oh man, it's so true. Yeah, and we've just been actually recording an episode with someone where we were talking a lot about sort of like emotional regulation and dysregulation and regulating your
Yeah.
nervous system and stuff. And I think a lot of that does kind of tie into that as well,
Yeah.
right? Like when we get
Yeah.
into these states of dysregulation, for a lot of people, that's kind of like their emotional home. That's what they're used to. That's their comfort zone, so to
Yeah.
speak. And it's really hard to break out of that. So I'm glad that you post content that kind of inspires people to put themselves first.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's always also unhealthy ways to put yourself first, but that's the whole point to us to get to the healthy aspect of what's good for me and not, you know, not something that's gonna make me be egotistical or prideful, but rather, the healthy you is gonna be the best you.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. I was thinking like you was obviously saying that you take on board a lot of people what people say to you through DMs. People get in contact with you. They tell you their stories. You're obviously an active listener, and I was thinking like being an active listener is obviously a big part of your life. Like you're obviously listening and taking on people's emotions. Do you find sometimes that's can be quite a challenging place to be
Yeah.
sometimes? Like you're taking on a lot of emotional kind of baggage, and then trying to kind of create um content, for want of a better word, answers for people, I guess, or ways. Do you find that sometimes that it's there is an emotional um kind of weight to what you have to do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm also very introverted, so that's the funny
Oh,
thing. It's
okay.
like I'm great on a stage. You put me on a stage with thousands of people, I'm amazing. I'll own the stage. But if you put me in like a one-on-one, I'm just awkward. It's like, do you like cheese? Like I don't know what to talk about. So this is one of those things that for me is just like, okay, I'm very introverted. I would prefer to sit at home and watch paint dry. Like that's literally
mm,
my best case scenario. But I know that there's certain things that I have gifts in and certain things that I have to be open to and I push myself to be on it. But it is very taxing. It's definitely very yeah, it's taxing. It's definitely very tough to have to manage my own stuff, but then also the conversations that I have with other people. But then I would be messed up or wrong, which is okay. Like this is a hard thing that I'm learning too, the hard no. But there is some aspect of it that, that it'd be messed up for me to say, oh, I think I can help you with this or guide you through this, even though because for humans, no matter what, we know the answer. It's just we just need somebody else to tell us the answer. Like the same thing. We just need somebody to repeat the thing that we already know. So putting myself in that position to be able to do that for people, but it is taxing. It is something that I just want to sit at home and do nothing after, but I try.
mm. Yeah, that's quite funny actually. And I was just thinking, like, from my own perspective, when I've had issues and I've just been like talking to everyone about it except for myself. And I'm like, what do you think I should do? Like, and you just need that one person that's like, you need to like walk away from the situation, you need to say no, or like, whatever it might be. Let's talk about boundary setting then. When we talk about like no being the most powerful word that you can kind of implement into your vocabulary.
Yeah.
And again, I guess it all comes down to self-worth, right? Like
Yeah.
we need to have the self and the self-love and the self-compassion to be able to walk away from situations and say no to, whether it be work engagements or relationships or seeing friends at a certain point or whatever it might be. Like how does one navigate putting boundaries in place and sort of implementing that into their life?
Yeah, so again, that's something I myself am working on. I have a friend named Basilio. Basilio is a phenomenal musician. He's a podcast editor for like a big company called Hollow. He does all these amazing things. But the most amazing thing about Basilio is that his no really means no. Like if he says no, the world could be ending around him, and you tell him the only way they could do it is if you actually do this thing, and he's like, no, it means no. And it's something that as I like analyze that we tend to say yes to everything because we think that it gives us more worth. So what ends up happening is that it devalues us. Our our constant yes devalues our yes. So we say yes to everything, even though it's going to be against us, even though it's going to hurt us and make us more tired, just because we think that by saying yes, people are going to like us more, or we're going to seem more pleasant, or whatever that might be. It devalues the value of that yes. So sticking firm to the no, it's one, it's yes, it adds more value to you, yes, but also it safeguards you. Like that's the entire point of us being authoritative with our no, is that it safeguards us from being hurt, from being used, from using ourselves too much. So I think for me, that's something I'm still really unpacking, and how to say no effectively and when to say no. Um, not saying no for everything, but when it matters.
Yeah, I totally hear you because I am a complete people pleaser. So I feel your I can feel it from you like that sometimes it is hard to say no to things. You don't want to say no. Like it's like there's a part of you that's like I'm not I really want to say no, but I don't want to say no. And then you end up like you say, you end up devaluing what you're trying to put out there, and it's just very difficult sometimes.
Do you know what?
Um,
I would say I don't think I'm a people pleaser, and I have no problem with saying no. But I've noticed that when I do have like, if I do struggle to say no, it's usually because of a fear of like nothing better coming along or like the
mm,
lack aspect of it. So it's usually work stuff, right?
that's an even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, no, yeah,
You're
I'm
missing
fucked.
out.
Yeah, like when it comes, well, I mean, like I don't get FOMO because I'm a
Yeah.
complete like recluse, but like when I have no issue saying no to like friends or family or whatever. But if it's a work situation, the only time that I do struggle is when I'm like, oh, but what if this is the last opportunity that I'm ever going to have of this? So it's like again, it comes back to self-worth and like fit, like a lack mentality and scarcity mindset and all of that. It's like, it's really
Yeah.
hard to change that mindset.
Yeah. I mean, that happened to me. Well, this is the last time that's happened to me, but I was invited to speak at this conference, and this is before like they asked me like 2 years ago to speak at this conference. Like I'm like, wow, that's great. You guys are just really planned up. I lied. It wasn't 2 years, like a year and some change. Like it was a real long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
So they reached out to me for this conference, and I get paid to speak at events, and I was like, but this time I didn't really have a name, and this was like a massive event with like 6,000 people, and I'm like, you know what, just give me whatever you can give me. They gave me $500, and they gave the other three keynotes about 8,000 to 10,000 a piece. And I'm
Oh,
like, I kind of undersold myself there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I was the last speaker like of the night. So I was like, man, maybe I should have ask for a little more. But I think that's a part of like that value understand, and that again, that's something that's ever happening again. I'm very clear on those things, and it's not about the money, but it's about the thing that you're willing to trade off for. You would say, okay, well, I'm just excited to be in the room. And that's good. And there are certain things that as you grow, you are going to have to like trade off. But at that point, that was something they could have afforded me. It was something I could have asked for what I believe I was worth in that aspect, and been okay with not getting it. The problem is that we think that if we don't get this one, then we're not going to get any other one,
Mm.
and that's
Mm.
not the case. It's just there has to be something that's worth your value there and your time there. If not, you're just literally wasting the time that you could have invested in something else, something that would have been more productive for you.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I'm terrible for that again. This is just could be about me being a terrible human being. But yeah, undervaluing myself in
Yeah.
situations, particularly when it comes to work. I think
Yeah.
you're quite good at valuing your time and your worth. But yeah, a lot of times you're just sort of underselling
Yeah.
stuff. Like you, I'd be like, yeah, I'd do it for 500,
I'll do it for
and then
free.
and then for
I bet
free.
I'll pay you if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, yeah,
I get so
yeah.
annoyed at him. I'm like, but like what? Like you've been doing this for years. Like, come on.
But it is true. But it's finding out where that stems from, right?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And it is part of that kind of psyche, I think, that low self-esteem.
Yeah. Or just being excited for something that, I mean, I get it because I'm analyzing myself. I get it because it's a big event, it's a big stage, and all these things. But then realizing that if I were to get what I'm worth getting, it would have been made it that much better. It would have been
Mm,
like, okay, I'm here and I actually am happy that I'm here. I'm not just checking off a box and saying I did it, but rather, oh no, I was valued to be here. You're going to speak differently. You're going to act differently.
Yeah,
And
mm. Yeah, so true. And I guess a lot of this sort of comes down to identity as well and who you feel like you are at an identity level. And again, when Giles says he's very bad at sort of undervaluing himself and probably, feeling guilty about charging people a certain amount of money or like, oh, having all of these beliefs around, well, no, I have to like deliver above and beyond to even get paid, or I have to work hard to make
yeah.
any money at all and stuff like that. And I guess it does come down to your who you are at an identity level. Like,
Mhm.
for me, it's taken a lot of work, but at an identity level, I am a person who earns this amount of money or, goes to these events or sells this much work or does whatever. And if I want to move up, I have to shift at an identity level. Otherwise, I'm still going to be sort of dragging myself back down subconsciously, right?
Yeah, but I think that's also a core of it, like that our identity isn't based on the things we do, it's based on who we are. So when we're willing to undersell ourselves, it's because we think that that's what we're worth. Like at that point,
Mm,
we're like, okay, well, it's fine. I just want to be present, want to be around here. That's what my value is. It has nothing to do with what you're delivering or how good you are. Well, I mean, how good you are is something that you hone yourself, but it doesn't have to do with like any of those services. It has everything to do with the fact that your identity is in you, not in your action, not in what you sell, not none of that. And if you value that, then how people address your identity, you're going to value more. So,
yeah, people always treat you the way that you sort of believe
yeah,
you should be
the
treated,
way you
really.
allow them to treat you,
Right.
you accept it.
Yeah,
That
no,
goes back to the
totally.
boundary thing. I'm not going to let you treat me however you want just so you're comfortable around me. That's a boundary. This is how I deserve to be treated. Anything under that is not worth being around.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I think we can all learn something from that, but it is hard. I mean, like, do you have any? Because obviously, there's one thing for us talking about this and being like, yeah, all you have to do is have a different identity. But like, how does one change that within them, that mindset? Is it even a mindset shift or
Yeah.
is it something deeper?
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to that because there's certain identity issues when it comes to like the way we were raised or the traumas we experienced. There are identity issues with just the group of people that we're around, right? Sometimes you're in a group of friends that aren't serving who you want to be or what you deserve in general. So I think really identifying ironically, identifying where your identity issues stem from. Is it something that my parents used to say to me? Is it something that I grew up with, fear, chronic fear, whatever that is, or is the people around me, being able to first identify where that is and start addressing small things to it. So like if you struggle with identity in terms of self-worth, which is the most common, which a lot of people struggle with in general, but it's the most common. Is it because someone spoke to you and told you you're worthless, and you're convinced of that, and they kept repeating it, and then actually challenge that? Because I don't think we challenge our traumas often. I think we kind of just accept them and say, okay, well, this is part of who I am. But if you challenge it, if someone told me I'm worthless, why did they tell me that? What is it rooted in? Is it rooted in something that they're struggling with, and they're trying to pass that off onto me? Or is it something that legitimately I was doing something in that moment that was worthless, and am I still doing that thing? And then I think when we begin to challenge our traumas, begin to realize that they're not real. It's like that whole like uh you're sleeping at night and you see the chair in your room and it has clothes on. Now you think it's like a person there. But then you turn on the light or you go and walk over to it and it's just a pile of clothes that you just didn't put away because you're lazy, you didn't do laundry. But when you begin to challenge that thing, it loses its power over you. When we let it happen, we let our mind race and we let the belief become its own thing. But when you challenge it, it disappears. So it's just challenge the debilitating disbeliefs or beliefs that you have.
That is such a great analogy. I've never heard of that. I mean, obviously, I know the chair thing well, but like, I've never heard of it in that
The floor drove.
regard. The floor drove. Yeah, my sister had one of those. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Like it kind of reminds me of like the sort of take your thoughts to court kind of thing. Like what's
Yeah.
the evidence, you know? And I
Yeah.
know that a lot of sort of like CBT therapies and stuff like that revolve around that concept of like what we think isn't necessarily the truth, right?
Yeah.
Always. You
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the reality. I think it's we let those things have power because we've never confronted them. And when you don't confront, you're going to repeat, right? That's the reality of it. It's funny because my first viral video was a J. Cole line. J. Cole's a rapper from over here, and J. Cole said, I'm tired of living with demons because they keep inviting more." Right. So like you're inviting ththese things in. And then the reference that I made there, I was like, this is the truth. That the reason that for a lot of us we can't defeat the demons that we're living with is because we're entertaining them. We make them a part of our character trait. We make them a part of our lifestyle. We say this is who I am. That's just the way I am, which is a terrible excuse for those things. So the reality of us just kind of feeding into that because we think that's who we should be is what's killing us ultimately.
That again is another great analogy. I mean, J. Cole's great, and it's a good it's a good one to like reference. I was
Yeah.
just thinking like living in this kind of digital age, and we touched a little bit on like stories and the stories we tell and the stories that we tell to ourselves as well, and living in this kind of time with social media and stuff, and we don't always like get an an authentic and accurate kind of display of ourselves or how we put ourselves out there. How do you deal with sometimes when you're talking to people who find it difficult to put across a compelling narrative, like who maybe feel like they don't have one, like they
Yeah.
don't have a compelling narrative to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a story again. I think sometimes we just don't identify with it correctly. Like we don't know how to flesh it out and how to just tell it. One thing that I've always suggested and always give advice when I talk, specifically with branding, is to tell the thing that you love, right? Because that's gonna help you be able to tell your story because you love something because it's related to something in you. There's something you're connected to, something that's a part of you. So if you tell the thing that you love, it's gonna be easy for you to tell your story. Everything is just gonna flourish from it. Even if it's even if you feel like it's the most insignificant thing, it could be you love fishing and that's your thing, and you tell stories about fishing, and then you find deep ways, pun intended, because water is deep, and
Yeah.
ways to just connect that to something that someone else is going to be like, hey, I never knew that, and that helped me learn this or grow from this or dive into this. Everyone has a story, and I think everyone's story is rooted in what they love. So if you love helping people, that's going to be part of your story. If you love whatever a craft or something, that's going to be a part of your story, and people are going to connect to the thing you love and ultimately connect to you. So that's the bridge in between those two.
Yeah, I think going back to what we were talking about in terms of identity as well, I feel like there's a kind of like pressure, and maybe this is a generational thing as well. Like maybe younger generations find this harder, or maybe they're better at it, better than us at this. But I feel like with social media, it's obviously, it's the show reel of our lives, right? And it
Yeah.
kind of can breed this kind of inauthenticity. And really, in amongst all the sort of inauthentic accounts, that I personally think the authentic humanness
Mhm.
always shines. It always stands out amongst all the like sort of fairy tale show really type accounts. I always personally am attracted to the ones with where it's people just showing themselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly kind of thing. I don't know if you agree with that from a marketing perspective, because
Yeah.
you're a lot more experienced in that than I am, but
Yeah, no, that's the rise right now for social media. Like we're going from this, not that these accounts still aren't used and still aren't successful, but um, we're moving away from this like over edited, super hyperactive, accounts more to like what you said, the personal human aspect, because it's actually this actually is a generational thing in marketing. Not to make this too much about marketing, but before we had something called funnels where it would be leads for click for buys, right? So people to subscribe or buy something, and you would introduce them to one thing, and then that funnel leads to another thing, and then ultimately your end goal. We're shifting now from funnels type of marketing to community-based marketing, where
Mm,
people want to be a part of something, which like these accounts that blow up that become really big are these accounts that show the very beginning of the business, right? Like the business aspect of it. Oh, I'm starting a coffee company, which is another one that was like really famous, and he would showcase every aspect of his personal struggle of having no finances, of being broke, and all these all the intricate parts of humanity. And I think that's interesting that we are going backwards again, back to what we should have been, and we're looking more for the human aspect of people, which is that's a natural inclination for us. We want to connect with people, we want to commune. Even the most introverted person in the world, they still have a cycle of, okay, I need friends, I need people around me, I need this, I need that connection. So I think that's what we're seeing, and I think that's beautiful. I think that's the most important thing of it, because it's easy to compete with people when they're showing you a false narrative of who they are. It's not even their
mm.
actual life. They're just showing you who they want to be, who they pretend to be. They're not showing you who they actually are. But I think that people relate more to people who are authentically themselves.
Yeah, so true. It's funny because I use that in the accounts that I follow. Like I try to follow authentic accounts, but in my own, I have my own social media page for my own work and other stuff outside this podcast. And like, if I'm having a rough time or I'm just super busy or just bogged down with life, I just don't really post as much on social media because I'm like, well, who's going to want to hear about this? Like, this is like negative or boring or just real, quote unquote
Yeah.
real life stuff. But actually, those are the accounts that I gravitate towards because it makes me feel like I'm,
Mm.
yeah, or like I'm friends with that person. If
Yeah.
it's the really clever sort of influencers, for want of a better word, who include their followers in everything, that I
Yeah.
think have the strongest communities. Maybe not the most followers, but the most engagement, I think, and
Yeah.
diehard fans.
And it's a lot of work. Like honestly, I do a terrible job. Like I kind of post and throw my phone across the room. That's really my whole goal there. But there are people that do amazing jobs, and they really have, I don't know how they have the time, but they have the time to like respond to comments and
Mm,
actually engage with everybody. I think that's awesome. Like I wish I had more time. Maybe I'll dedicate like a day a week or something just to respond to these things. But that is one of the most beautiful aspects of it, because one, you're gonna grow a loyal following. It doesn't have to be massive, but you're gonna have people that you could sell them a rock and they're gonna say, you know
yeah,
what, I
yeah.
love this rock. This is my pet rock. And they're gonna love that because that's the loyalty to it. That's brand loyalty ultimately. But it's also nice because they get to engage like with that person that they follow. It's not just,
Mm.
just an account with nice words.
Yeah, it is social media at the end of the day, isn't it? Not
Yeah.
anti-social media.
Yeah.
It's people, I think
Supposed to be social. Yeah.
it's supposed to be, and I think as much as we do kind of gravitate well, we kind of turn into zombies while we're engaging with social media. I think the reason why we're most of us are on it is to feel connected with the rest
Yeah.
of the world. I think the people that I personally am friends with that don't have social media are just much better at actually connecting in real life with people, and they make time and like call people up and hang
Yeah.
out with people in real life, and the rest of us get that sense of connection through social media. So it's tricky, but I'm glad it's moving more towards that, real
Yeah.
life aspect, to be honest with you.
And we do need to have some points of disconnect too. That's the other aspect, because statistically speaking, here in the States at least, this current generation coming has the highest level of depression and anxiety recorded in history. And the reason being many reasons. I mean, stuff like no faith and stuff like self-hate and all these things are a very big portion of it. But I firmly think that is the obsessiveness with social media. Like
Mm,
social media has obviously its amazing qualities and amazing, amazing, amazing uses. But then there's a downside to it where people become so fixated with it that it becomes like their God. Like it becomes a thing that they
mm,
everything has to be this has to be perfectly. One thing that I'm very big about is like not following an aesthetic. And as a person that believes in branding, branding is very different when you are doing when you're selling like a clothing line or anything of that nature. I really don't care about an aesthetic other than like my actual like room and stuff because that's a part of everything.
Mhm.
Mm,
But like you know how people follow like a color pattern and a palette and they have to be this a post here and a picture here, whatever it is. I really don't follow that because it's not that big of a deal. Like it's not,
mm,
you don't have to kill yourself making your social media look amazing. That means that your messaging isn't good enough. If you have to sit here and catch people through other things, that means you probably aren't delivering messages that people want to hear. You just want to keep them because of the look of it, and you're over obsessing with what it looks like and not what it actually is. And I think that's the biggest downfall that we have, that we become so fixated with it that it becomes like everything.
so true. It kind of reminded me of like in filmmaking, and probably in like normal writing as well, but you have like show, don't tell, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't want to go overkill and like, right, what color code is it? And it has to be in this order and this pattern and stuff. But actually it's the content itself, which
Yeah.
is the key.
Well,
Yeah.
it goes back to that the Rick Rubin thing with like, it's got to be from you. It's got to be about you and what you're trying to tell, and it's not about like just thinking about what everyone else is going to like.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot to do with it. Really, is that it's not about the
Oh,
audience or
so
whatever. It's not.
true.
It's
Well,
it's about like what you should be putting out. What's like you say about authenticity and stuff.
Yeah.
Actually putting out what you like and
yeah.
what you
Yeah.
want to express.
I think he was saying that the minute you care more about the people that are buying the art instead of what you're putting out, it becomes a commodity
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
art. And I don't know, maybe I'm an old hippie, but like I feel like it should be art. What you're
Yeah.
putting out there, it should be contributing to people's life in
Yeah.
some way. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's how we go from community to use. If I'm just putting something out because I want you to buy it, well, okay, I mean it's great as a business, whatever, that's a thing. But then I'm not building community. I'm just
Mm.
building another selling platform.
Mm,
That's what it is at the end of the day. And then also, but then it makes sense that the people that are in the community, they're gonna support you no matter what. So your goal should always be community because they're gonna support you, period. But
yeah.
if you're trying to just sell to them, it's gonna be harder to grow.
Yeah, people know. People know when you're just trying to sell
Yeah.
them something. I mean, we all know those pages that like are always plugging a product or
Yeah.
always, sponsored post, sponsored post, sponsored post. And then you're like, well, I bought the first thing that you recommended, and like now you're recommending something else. And it's like, I don't know, I'm very picky about brand, I sometimes get people
Product
approaching
placement
me.
types.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, because it's just again, it's inauthentic, right? It's like
Yeah.
or your followers know that you're just getting paid for this, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's
And like
so
those accounts
fascinating.
that do like the what's it called, the white label marketing. So they tell you, oh, you can make $350,000 a day. I'm like, that's insane. How? But
Yeah, please.
If you were
they,
making that much money, you wouldn't be telling me how to do
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's like all you have to do is pay $700 for my course, and like there's no
Yeah.
Yeah,
value
yeah,
in the
yeah,
actual course. It's just a
yeah,
white labeled course that they resold, but they're not actually making any connection. And then you look at these accounts, and they have like 150,000 followers, but you go and see their views, and they have 6 views, and it's
yeah,
like, bro, that
exactly.
doesn't. I don't know how much views cost or if you could buy them, but buy them if you could. Just match
Yeah.
If you're making
match it up.
$365,000
Yeah,
a
you could have
day,
paid for a couple views.
yeah, I don't. It sounds like we get the same kind of algorithm.
I could say I get quite a few of
Because
those.
yeah, I get them on YouTube all the time, and I also get a lot of like, you need to be writing books and selling them on Amazon, or like some kind of
I tried that. It did
theme.
not go well.
Did
No,
you?
no,
It,
really.
Oh, that's all I
it did
needed to
not
hear.
go
But
well.
I just needed to hear from one person that's actually done it, and not that bloody woman that's always like, "I'm living in Spain now." Like,
Yeah, so I've just bought a villa in Spain because I've
yeah,
written one book. Yeah.
it's so infuriating because
Must be nice. My book. I mean, I put it out there, so what happens?
we'll see,
That
we'll
you
see.
wrote it.
Get
That's the
used
main
Amazon.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it goes back to what Rick Rubin was talking about. If you're doing it just for the money, then it's not going to sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think like social media is in an interesting place at the moment. Like I
Yeah.
feel like my kids' generation, who like they're teenagers,
Yeah.
are just not as into it. Like
Yeah.
TikTok, but like even Instagram, they're like kind of
Yeah.
turned off. So it's an interesting period, I think, where we're like I think, like you say, I think the only way people are going to start to re-engage is if you actually see, because like my kids, they know if you're they know BS like a
Yeah. They
mile,
see right
mile
through it.
away.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it is like, you are going to have to see more people being more authentic and being more truthful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, speaking about community, outside of the world of social media. And we've spoken a lot about how we can kind of use social media to create more of a community. I know that in your work that you do kind of talk a lot about fostering a community. How can people go about implementing that in their lives? We live in such a busy world nowadays, and we live
Yeah.
in the world of social media and people in their phones and devices and working on their computers all day and stuff like that. Like, how important is it for us to foster healthy communities and connections with people? And how can we go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at its core, it's the most essential part of being a human. Like the
Mm,
human experience itself is being able to connect with people and being able to build relationships in all those aspects. Um, I think finding community of like-minded people is hard, but ironically, social media makes that so much easier. It's finding things and looking for those things, actively looking to be a part of it, and forcing yourself to be out there and to be in these things, which is the hard part. The
mm,
initial aspect of just like pushing yourself to do it is hard, but after you start, it's like riding a bike, right? You keep falling, but once you get those wheels going, it's easy to be involved. Using social media to find those groups of people and connecting with them in real life, I think that's the hard part, but the essential part, and
mm.
actually going and doing the thing.
Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, because obviously in IRL, you've got like groups and sports and stuff like that. And I'm like you, I'm an introvert as well.
Yeah.
So like the idea of going out and doing something like that is just horrifying. But you're saying that actually using social media to meet new people, like make friends and
Yeah.
stuff.
So don't like go meet up with strangers and one individual stranger like
Oh.
in the back of an alley. That might be a little weird.
Yeah.
But groups of people, yeah, it's like events and stuff that you agree with. Like there's a popular trend happening now where everybody's running. Um,
Or
those
park
run
run and stuff.
clubs.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
I've seen.
literally just getting together to go run, which I mean, cool, but but those are people that's similar interests and that's how they're building. And there's like another thing, like in faith-based stuff, there's something called theology on tap where you would go to a bar and they would talk about faith, right? And there's another one
Mm,
that's coming out from that, which is science on tap. So you would go to a bar and there's like lecturers that would come and they would give lectures and on particular topics. Like I think the one that I saw last month was based on the human psychology, like why
Hmm.
humans do the things they do. And there was like a doctor from NYU, a professor from NYU, and
wow.
he gave the topic. So, using social media to find like-minded groups of people and doing the things that you actually would want to do and like to build community. That's how you're going to build community. So,
That is so cool. Is that just in America or is that a worldwide thing?
no clue.
I've just written it down because I was
It's
thinking I
gonna
could
be,
do a writers group on tap.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
awesome, actually.
Do that. You should
yeah,
post it.
yeah,
Look at that.
I wanted to go to the Science on Tap and the Faith on Tap. Actually, I just
yeah.
think it's
Yeah,
quite both quite interesting. And
yeah, that would be great.
you talked about faith and obviously you're quite open about how your faith um it kind of influences a lot of your work and informs a lot of your work and your own personal life and stuff. And we've got listeners that are all faith-based and not faith-based. And I would say consider I'm a very spiritual person. So could you talk a little bit about that and how, as humans, when you say humans are lacking faith, and how much of an impact that has on people's mental health, self-worth, relationships and friendships and stuff, and what you mean exactly by faith, and
Yeah.
and if you don't subscribe to a particular religion, how can you implement faith into your life?
Yeah. So I'm Catholic Christian, right? So I practice Catholicism. Um and it's interesting because I come from like I lead retreats. I still to this point, right? I speak at conferences and all these events. But however, I kind of not skewed, but kind of make my social media very neutral because I do want those conversations to still happen. I don't want anyone to ever feel like, oh no, you're just preaching at me because you believe this thing, not
Hmm.
because
Mm,
you believe in the goodness of it and the love of it, but rather you just want to convert me. That's not the conversation I want to have with people. It is the hope as a Christian, right? My that's the Great Commission to go make disciples of all nations. So it's just that it is a hope, and it is something that I do have conversations with people who who have no faith, who never believed in anything, and because of those conversations, they were invited to other no, other faith-based organizations. But I never make that the center point of it. Now, what I mean by having faith in that term, obviously, so I've seen like miracles, like I've seen paralyzed people walk. I saw a deaf woman regain hearing. I've seen all these amazing, amazing things. So for me, it's easy to say faith in God because I've seen God act. So I can say that when we talk about faith in general, when we talk about having faith in something, that at its core, it's always going to lead us back to the great design, the great creator. Like there's no matter what you believe or don't believe, we can all agree that there's something more. And that's even the most atheists of the world can agree that there has to be something that's bigger than us, even if you don't believe it's something spiritual. Like some people would say it's like the universe or something of that nature. What faith does, it gives us a language to connect to those things that we understand and even deeper relationship, but not to get too into that. Um, when we lose faith is that we believe that there's nothing and everything. Like everything means nothing. And that's the struggle that we're dealing with in the world where people believe that there is no point to anything. That I don't have faith in humanity. I don't have faith in success. I don't have faith in this. I there's nothing of value to it. So if you think like that, if you think that there is no value, there is no reason, then it's naturally going to integrate itself to you. You don't have value. You don't have worth. Everything you do is pointless. The world's going to end. What's the point of anything? So you don't care. So I think that's more where we lean towards having faith in something, having something, a deeper want and a deeper knowledge of like there's more, and that's going to push you to do better.
That's so
Mm.
interesting and so well put. And yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of more sort of science
Yeah.
focused people. Arguably, yeah, they still have faith. It's more of a sort of coming from a quantum physics standpoint, but
Well,
it,
my background's in biology, so I studied microbiology. The greatest my the father of my field of study, the father of genetics, was Father Gregory Mendel, a Catholic priest. Or the Big
mm,
Bang Theory was a Monsignor Lamatrie, a Catholic priest. Or the reason we can send emojis via text message, it was a Catholic nun. She actually designed the coding behind that. So it's like faith and religion don't actually clash; it actually goes together. The greatest observatory in the world is actually in the Vatican. Well, now they moved it to Arizona.
mm.
But it's the stars. So the first observatory was in the Vatican. So it's like science doesn't conflate with religion. It's just we try to make them pit at each other, but they actually complement each other.
Well, that goes back to what, I mean, and this is a thing of social media again, but shouldn't keep saying about that. It's maybe more of a humanistic thing
Yeah,
approach is that we're in these kind of binary
yeah,
times, that
yeah,
everything's black and white, and actually it isn't. There is
yeah,
a lot more nuance to the world, and
yeah,
like you're saying, actually, if you have deeper, meaningful conversations with people, that it isn't black and white. Everything
yeah,
has got, there's definitely a lot more gray matter
yeah.
to
And everybody has a
one of it.
reason why.
Yeah,
That's the biggest aspect of it. Yeah, so we
Mm.
just gotta love people, not love what they hate or hate what
yeah,
they love.
It's
yeah.
so true, so true. A lot of positive words of wisdom there. Thank you. So where can people find you?
Social media, it's my name, Joshua Rosa, underscore Joshua Rosa on everything. Uh, and yeah, and I made the website, which is funny enough, that's the mission with it. I'm made more motivated, which was a stupid name at the time, but now I'm kind of like, okay, it kind of makes sense because
Yeah.
that's the goal with it. And it's the influence was to help people build community and be able to actually help each other. Because I got that from like all the DMs I was getting. I was like, well, what if people just answered each other? You guys have some great answers. So I'm working on creating that community there. I haven't really touched that yet because of all the other things I'm juggling, but that's the goal with that one.
Oh, amazing. That's so cool. Okay, well, people will, I'm sure, go and check out your videos. They're so, yeah, just
Yeah, really inspiring. Yeah.
really inspiring. Yeah, and they're just a little reminder of your own self-worth when you need it. Personally, I find.
Thank you
Yeah.
guys for that.
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, guys. Well, thank you for having me, and we'll be in touch.